So as you can see, I've got a small piece of scrap wood which I'm going to be using as the base of my model. And basically I'm just going to coat that in PVA glue. I'm just applying it straight out of the bottle, no need to worry about thinning it down, and I'm just using a pretty nasty synthetic brush to spread it round on the base. After the base has got a nice coverage of PVA glue, I'm going to give it a coat of sand. I then allow the PVA glue to dry, and then I tip off the excess sand. This base is then ready for painting. I'm now undercoating the base using Guncorp's Brown. I then wash the base using Sepia Ink by Vallejo Game Color. I haven't thinned this down at all, so it's going to really darken down the base, but that's absolutely fine because that is the effect that I'm going for. I then do a dry brush of Guncorp's Brown, and this is then followed by a lighter dry brush of Hammerfall Khaki. All the areas that are going to be painted in metallics are base coated using black paint. Here I'm using Vallejo Model Air Black. You could use any black from any manufacturer, however I like the Vallejo Model Air because it goes on nice and thin in a smooth, even coat, but it still covers very nicely. I'm now going to base coat all the metallic areas. For this I'm going to be using Pig Iron by Privateer Press, and this is going to be darkened with a little bit of the black we were using previously, which was of course the Vallejo Model Air Black. I'm just applying this to the palette as well as thinning it down with a decent amount of water, as I want this to go on in a nice smooth even coat. As you can see, I'm using this mixture to base coat all of the metallic areas on the model. I now give all the metallic areas a wash using Badub Black Wash. I now start highlighting the metallic areas using a thinned down mixture of the base coat. I now use pure pig iron, and again I thin this down and apply this as the next highlight. It's important to keep the metallic paints thin so that the transition between the lighter metallic colours and the darker ones are nice and smooth. I do another highlight, this time with pig iron mixed with a little quicksilver, and of course, as usual, this is thinned down with water. My next highlight is using pure thinned down quicksilver. For my final highlight, I use quicksilver mixed with a little Morrow white. This is a pure white, and this is just going to lighten the metallic up, and this is going to be used just to edge highlight the most raised edges, as well as dotting some of the rivets, just to make them stand out a little more. I'm now going to be changing the silver areas to a bronze kind of colour, and to do this I'm going to be using several glazes of sepia ink. This is really going to tie these metallic plate areas in with the rest of the model and overall make the model look more harmonious. Hammerfall Khaki is used to base coat the shaft of the arrow. I then washed the arrow with a thinned down mixture of sepia ink. A second wash of sepia ink is applied, however this time it is applied selectively to the underside of the arrow. Battlefield Brown is used to base coat the fletching on the arrow. A mix of Guncorp's Brown and Battlefield Brown is used to highlight the fletching on the arrow. I place the miniature in the position that I want it to be when the base is finished, and I then proceed to drill a hole where the model needs to be attached to the base. As you can see when I've finished, there's a nice hole where the pin in the model can easily be attached to the base. This allows me to kind of get an idea as to how I want to position the other pieces of scenic material around the model. I'm now going to be creating a nice kind of forest floor leaf kind of scatter. It's going to simulate nice dirt and twigs and all that kind of stuff. Now, the best material to use for this is in fact tea leaves. Now, you've got to find a good brand, not necessarily an expensive brand, just a brand that has lots of nice variation in size and colour. As you can see, I've coated the base in PVA glue, and I've put down a piece of paper to catch any excess tea leaves, and I'm just going to coat the top of the base in this tea leaf mixture. I then use a mixture of very thin down PVA glue to seal in the tea leaves, just to make sure there isn't anything loose. I now glue down a twig onto the model base. This is obviously going to represent a nice large log, and to adhere it to the base I use super glue. I'm now going to start painting the log. Now this is quite an interesting stage because I haven't really followed any precise recipe. I'm really just going wild and using a whole pile of different techniques and colours to make the log fit in with the model. What I'm starting with is I'm starting with several glazes around the outside of the log with sepia ink, and this is just going to, darken it down and get a nice bark colour. And then I'm really going to go wild doing all sorts of different coloured glazes. I'll do some green glazes, the same green I use for the flesh to create kind of a greenish moss kind of colour. I'll do brown glazes, maybe some red brown like the brown that I used for the pants, the bloodstone. On the ends I'll do some glazes of some sort of tan colour to lighten them up a bit, and then maybe some darker washes. I'm really just using all sorts of interesting colours, even blue, tiny bit of purple here and there to create cold shadows. I'm just doing all sorts of interesting things just to create a bit of colour harmony between the log and the rest of the model, and just make it kind of visually interesting. It really doesn't matter what you do, just as long as it looks kind of cool. I then finish off with just a little bit of dry brushing to highlight it up, and then a few glazes just to tone it back down again. You can see the technique I'm using here is somewhere between a glaze and wet blending. I'm kind of using very transparent paint, layering it all over the model like a thick glaze or a thin wash or something, and then I'm dotting other colours of greens and browns and all sorts of things onto that so it kind of bleeds and blends into each other. To create the leaves on the base, I'm going to be using mixed Italian bolognese herbs. Now these are dried out herbs, are available in your kind of spices section in your local supermarket or grocery store, and they're pretty cheap, about $3, and you get a massive thing of them. And if you sift through, you can find quite a large number of really cool looking, very highly detailed leaves, which are the perfect scale for the models that we're working in. Now I just dot a bit of PVA glue onto my base and then apply the leaves with some tweezers. Very fiddly but very realistic, and I've never been able to find a commercially available product that has superior detail to these. And what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be creating some blood effects, and for this I'm going to be using Selleys Polymer Clear Sealant. And I'm also going to be using some Tamiya Clear Red paint. all I do is mix up some of the crystal clear sealant and some of the red enamel paint, and then I just thin it down with a little bit of terps, and this will create kind of a thinnish sort of goopy pasty stuff, which is really glossy and really realistic actually. And yeah, what I'm going to then do is I'm going to kind of goop it onto all of the areas where I want the blood effects to be. And this will create really nice textured kind of blood effects, and is just far more realistic than painting straight gloss red paint onto your surface. If you want a really gory looking kind of effect, you can mix in sand into this mixture, but because I just want to get a blood kind of effect, I just stuck with the red paint and the sealant. And the final step is just to glue the model to its base, and that's the model complete. I hope you enjoyed it, I hope you learnt something. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in a later video.